This is actually devastating. Oh, I friggin' love it! Ah!
Shadiversity.
Greetings, I'm Shad, and I'm very excited to get to this sword review. So, Cult of Athena reached out to me and asked if they could send me a certain sword for review. And who am I to turn down the offering of swords? Now, what I like about when retailers offer swords for review, when I purchase swords, I'm usually a bit more reluctant to go fully into the destructive testing because I spent money on them. The other thing, though, that I really like about when they send you swords, oftentimes they'll send me swords that I would never have considered purchasing. And sometimes I can really prove me wrong. This is actually one of those cases. When I first saw this sword that they were offering to send, I fully misunderstood. I saw the first image, I didn't actually read the thing, I was like, oh yeah, cool sword, send it to me. But I actually thought it was an arming sword because I was thrown off by the proportions of how broad the blade base was. And my head gauged the overall size of the sword based on the width of the blade, thinking that this was a bastard sword, and your hand profile would usually take up this much, because this is a much broader blade, bigger base pummel, and so I wasn't aware, because I read, okay, oak shot something type sword, yeah, and I actually missed or didn't let it sink in to realize that this was an Alexandrian type sword, specifically oak shot type 18C, which is actually one of my favorite profiles and styles of swords. And so when I got this in the mail, I opened it, I was like, oh, it's one of these ones! And now I've been very excited to review this ever since. So what this is the Balaur Arms Oak Shot Type 18C 15th century Alexandria style sword. Bit of a mouthful, but what's really intriguing, and another thing that makes me interested, is that this one is on the more affordable end of swords of this style that are sold specifically in the functional category. And already this profile has a bit of a reputation of being a beastly cutter. And so I'm very excited to see how well this one performs. But before we get into the actual testing, it's also just a really intriguing and awesome blade profile that has, like I said, started to become one of my favorite, and I want to explain a bit of the ins and outs of this style. So Cult of Athena is selling this sword for $488 US, which is on the more affordable end of functional swords. It is on the higher end of the affordable end, but if you're anything between like 200 to about 500 to 600 is the affordable end, and the expensive ranges are when you hit the $1,000 mark. I love reviewing swords that are in the more affordable spectrum because they're more accessible for lots of people, and we've been seeing massive improvements in quality in this range of swords in the last few years. And the Balaur Arms Alexandria sword right here is exactly one of those examples. I did mention Cult of Athena sent this sword to me for review, and also Cult of Athena's my favorite sword retailer online. I'm not kidding when I say that I've found it easier to purchase swords from Cult of Athena, which is an international retailer, than it has been for me purchasing swords from Australian retailers. Look, Australian retailers, they're in a difficult position because there's more regulations and hoops they have to jump through and stuff, and makes the process more painful to actually buy, especially functional sharp swords. Cult of Athena, you should know the regulations of swords wherever you live in, so we'll send them to you. It's up to you to make sure you're obeying the law in your thing, and so they'll package it, send it. Very affordable, painless process, great range of swords, excellent pricing. Cult of Athena, brilliant source. The Balaur Alexandria sword is available for pre-order at the moment. Soon, and of course after pre-order it'll be available. But so check it out if you're interested. To begin with, I've already made a couple of shorts that just are there to introduce people to the idea of medieval sword categories. And the simplified sword categories, from short sword, arming sword, bastard sword, long sword, war sword, great sword, right, is a simplified but a good categorization system, easily adapted for role-playing and stuff. When you become a more, detailed sword connoisseur, you will come across the oak shot typology, which actually goes to categorize the swords based on blade profile, handle length, and then there's a sub-categorization for type of pummels and crossguards. But the core thing about the oak shot typology is blade length, blade profile, and handle length. on average, with additions for crossguard and pommel type. And you'll see the whole range of kind of medieval swords on that typology. Ewart Oakeshott, who is the man who developed it, was a massive medieval enthusiast, handled heaps of swords, and it's based on so it's not based on every single sword variant you could possibly think of or come up with. It's based on all the types of historical sword types that he has found and was able to handle himself. And that's where the typology comes from. And so when it comes to the 18 category, there are some distinctive features in sword 18 types, and then even more distinctive features to get us to the 18 type C. One of the distinctive features is how narrow the blade tapers, all right? So see how it tapers, it has a strong, wider base usually, and tapering to a fine point, but it is distinctive and different from an Oakeshott Type 15, which is considered kind of its brother. So a Type 15 sword is one that has almost direct parallel, like direct straight lines into the point. And the difference between a Type 15 and Type 18 is that this taper slightly curves in at the end. And so they're not perfect straight lines, they curve in, so there's kind of like a slight convex profile to the sword, which gives it its distinctive type. Then the other distinctive categories of both 15 and 18 is usually diamond cross section with a prominent central ridge. Type 18 blades were quite popular throughout all of Europe from the years 1410 to 1510, so they were quite broadly spread. But that is looking at the overall category of Type 18. What we have here is an 18C, and it's more distinctive by having a much wider and broader base, okay? And also two-handed. So there's Type 18 swords that are one-handed. So 18C is more two-handed, longsword category, very broad base. And that's one of the most distinctive features of this style sword, the 18C. And I love it. It looks glorious, but it turns out that seems to have a beneficial effect on its cutting capacity because, I don't know, there's more weight situated close to the hand, which gives more driving force, but because it's close to the hand, that still maintains a lot of point control, and you can absolutely feel that when you grab this sword and you just test out the overall maneuverability of this thing. And this is a very, very functional, usable sword, even with what you would assume is additional weight, but because it's, again, so close to the point of balance or the hilt. Beautiful, very functional, very usable. And that additional kind of weight seems to add more cutting capacity, which I'm very excited to see if this model achieves it as well. One of the other distinctive features of the Oakeshott Type 18C or Alexandria style sword is not only does it have a prominent central ridge, sometimes the ridge is actually raised a little bit higher with a convex grind on the bevel. So you have the primary tiny bevel along the blade here, and then this one specifically has a convex grind that goes inwards up to the central ridge, making the ridge more prominent, stand out, but overall making the blade stiffer as well. And although flexible, this is actually quite a good stiff blade, right? That's a feature specifically to make it more rigid in the thrust, hence a more effective thrusting sword. So why is the 18C called the Alexandria style sword? It's because most of the surviving examples of this blade comes from an armory in Alexandria. These are European swords that were gifted to the Mamluks of Egypt for the peace treaty of 1414. The peace treaty only lasted 10 years, but the swords that were a part of the gift in the treaty lasted a lot longer, and we have surviving examples. But it shouldn't be misunderstood to assume that because they're called the Alexandria style sword, that these are Middle Eastern, design swords. No, they're actually European swords. They're just far more rare. The surviving examples come from the Alexandrian armory, but there were this type of sword throughout Europe as well. And remember, the Oakeshott Type 18 category was actually quite broadly popular throughout all of Europe. It's just that this more specific kind of design is more rare, it seems. So let's look at this sword specifically, which is the Balaur Arms Alexandria style sword, or Oakeshott Type 18C. So the type of steel in this is actually GB60 SI2 MNA, high carbon manganese spring steel. So this is the information on this type of steel. 60 Si2 MNA spring steel has low content of alloying elements, high hardenability, higher than the 60 Si2 MN. This is 60 Si2 MNA. High toughness plasticity. That means flex. So it's got good flex, small decarburization tendencies, good tempering stability, good hot working property, and low cost. This type of steel has higher strength, hardness, elasticity, and hardenability than 65 MN steel, with the tendency of overheating sensitivity and temper brittleness. Interesting. So heat up the blade by accident too much, you can ruin the temper on this type of steel. Or ruin it easier than other types of steel, because you can ruin the tempers on any type of steel. But this is more in comparison to other grades of this 60 Si2 grade steel. Annealing mechanability is acceptable, low cold plastic deformation, poor weldability, loaded by the medium plate spring coil diameter. This is good steel, okay? In fact, it seems to have interesting properties over and above your kind of standard 1060 spring steel. So, good quality steel. It was designed in collaboration with sword maker L.K. Chen for this style, which is why, I think they were able to get it so accurate in terms of profile. It's tempered to a 54 to 55 HRC hardness, and this feature I actually quite like. The crossguard and pummel are made out of stainless steel. So the reason why I like this, okay, stainless steel isn't good sword blade material, but perfectly adequate for pummel and crossguard material, and the fact that it's stainless steel means you don't have to worry about rusting. I have other swords in which rusting has just been a pain to manage on the pummel and crossguard, and so if you only have to worry about the blade, to me that's an added benefit. Looking at the weight of this one specifically, it weighs in at 1.54 kilos, whatever that is in pounds. Maybe we'll put a conversion down there for people who are not as enlightened to use the metric system. But look, 1.5 kilos, very perfectly in range for long swords. Barely feel it. It is very functional, very usable. This is a, so far, beautiful sword. Okay, now let's look at the details. There are some cosmetic imperfections in the fit and finish. If we come in close and we have a look at the crossguard here, see there's just kind of this, disconnected, the actual covering on the handle has not come up cleanly to the very edge there. These are minor cosmetic imperfections. The overall fit and finish is pretty flawless in terms of the lines on the steel. So if we have a look at the lines on the blade, this is some of the straightest lines I've seen on a blade, okay? Lines on the crossguard, near perfect. Same with the lines on the pummel. And the peen cap, really, really good. So the only imperfections that I actually see is probably just how well the leather wrap is on the handle, but I can barely even, you can't even feel, and you can barely see the actual seam of the leather wrap. And the cording comes up underneath really nicely on the handle to give the texture that you want. And so actually the fit and finish is nearly flawless, with one major issue that I found. This flaw is an interesting one because it is easily fixed with proper sharpening. And by the way, this is a more affordable range. This isn't like in the premium quality. And so I feel this would be an unacceptable flaw if this was premium quality. It's more acceptable in the price range here, and especially because it's easily solved. The tip, specifically from this portion to here, is completely blunt. When I say blunt, I can press down as hard as I can. This is blunt as anything. The thing is though, the rest of the blade is nice and sharp, okay? Dangerously sharp. It's not razor sharp. This is I've not resharpened this. I want to test this with its factory edge that comes out, and it comes very sharp, but already I can tell this is not shaving hair sharp. This is cutting paper sharp with a big flaw on the tip. And so how well that will impact the actual cutting capacity, I don't think much. Most of the time you're going to be slicing through your target before any cutting comes to the tip, and even if it does, it's just going to slide off with no actual cutting effect there. The point of the tip is very strong, and I wonder if it becomes so blunt here because you can tell that they wanted the tip to be robust, but you can maintain such a robust, strong tip just by making the edge angle a little bit wider, but still getting an edge. There's no edge on this tip, okay? So that's one of the flaws with this model that was sent me. I don't expect it will be a consistent flaw. Maybe, I don't know. But that's just what is on this. Easily fixable if you resharpen it. So there's that to bear in mind. Now, the other issue I have with this model specifically, this top kind of round cover, is the locket. I have issues with the locket on this scabbard because it's not only full metal, but it overlaps the top. If you come and have a look here, it's actually metal on the top. So much so to the point that when you're putting the sword in and out of the scabbard, you can easily rub the edge of the sword on the inside edge of the locket here. And metal on metal, that'll, like, if you draw this sword and push it down or up to the point where it scrapes along the inside metal of the locket, you could blunten your sword in one draw of the sword. Noticing that, I'm actually very mindful when I put it in to not rub the edge of the blade on the inside edges of the locket here. But to me, that's a flaw. Like the fact that you could have high chance of blunting the blade because of the locket there. Not happy with that, okay? Overall, the scabbard looks very good, okay? I like the look of it. Again, flaw with the locket. I like the look of the shape, that's fine. But as soon as you hold it, you realize the leather is very poorly fitted. I can feel it not connected and could slide and become disconnected. The stitching, very clean. It's flimsy though. You can tell that this would not take too much of pressure for the wood inside to splinter. That's a common thing with a lot of scabbards, but just to be something to be mindful. There is no internal lining in this scabbard. So some of the nicest scabbards will have really like fine, thin wool lining. It's just wood on the inside. And because of that, you do end up getting little kind of flakes and bits of wood going on the blade. If the blade is properly oiled, you'll be protected against that. But so it's not a flawless or perfect scabbard by any means. It looks nice enough, and I do like that they send us a scabbard with the sword, but definitely not flawless. But again, you're not actually paying for the premium. This is in the affordable range. What you get for what you pay for at the moment, I'm still very, very pleased. There are some super autistic kind of observations with the sword. If we go super close here with the fit and finish, the line or distance in the opening for the crossguard is fine, but you actually see there's burrs on the inside kind of working of that opening there. And so if this does come loose, it'll scrape up against the blade, but it's not going to do permanent damage. But there's burrs there. There are tiny burrs on the peen cap here, and on the inside kind of line here. It's just not rounded off. It's not bad actually when I feel it, but it's just got a sharper edge there. And of course, where the covering on the handle touches the pommel, you see that it's not perfect as well. It's kind of just lipping. These are very minor flaws. They are flaws. If you're paying for premium flawless quality, you wouldn't want these little imperfections on them, but you're not. And I've mentioned this on my other sword reviews. I tend to actually prefer swords that have minor imperfections on it like this, because it feels more authentic and realistic. In history, they didn't have machine precision quality. So even on the premium quality swords of history, you'd actually find like little imperfections on the premium quality. We're spoiled in the modern day because of machine finishing and quality and stuff. And the steel quality just blows the historical steel quality out of the water. And just based on the steel quality, if you took this back in time, this sword would basically be magic for the quality of steel that's in it. Okay, so that is, the style of sword, the historical context, and my overall thoughts on the fit and finish. But you know what we really want to find out is how well does this thing cut? And I'm really excited for this one. I can't wait to give it a swing, test it out. I have purposely avoided using this sword because I wanted to keep the edge as sharp as possible from the factory edge that it was sent with. I am concerned if the edge sharpness might have been affected by the locket here, if it's scraped on the inside thing. But when I feel it, we still got a very good solid edge for most of the blade. Let's see how it cuts. There's always a caveat I worry about in cutting tests, and that is user error. And so we have to keep that in mind, okay? Because if my edge alignment is off, I won't cut the bottle, and people might assume that it's the quality of the sword. And so what I have to try and do is gauge the performance of the sword based within the realms of my own ability, and trying to gauge, am I cutting, adequately? Because sometimes you can just be off on that day, and your cutting is terrible. So we'll see how we go. Okay, bit splashy. Well, to me, I felt too much resistance for that one, and I suspect that's edge alignment by how unclean, or how, see how the cut line is not straight on that. So to me, that's user error, but the sword still got through it, you know. So we'll try again. Much better, much better. It's not the cleanest cut though. We'll try again. Switching edges now, using the opposite side, just to see if there is a difference. I'm feeling more resistance than I have with other swords at the moment. All right, I'll do reverse edge rising. Did I hit this first then?
No idea.
Let me try that again. No. Right here, I'm feeling less of an edge. Could be the sharpness that I'm dealing with. Let me cut much closer down to the blade. Wow, that was, okay. Massive difference, massive difference. So, inconsistent sharpness along the blade, right there. Cutting right on this one, barely felt that. And already the cut is cleaner. It's a bit ragged up here, much cleaner on the end. So the factory edge has inconsistency in the sharpness. And honestly, yeah, like I can feel it way sharper here than up here. That's going to affect the performance, okay? It's always interesting to try and gauge a sword's effectiveness based on the factory edge, because if it's sharpened up to the highest possible degree, it'll cut like a beast, clearly. So this is, at the moment, factory edge isn't the best out of swords that I have been sent. Though honestly, the worst factory edge I got was the bastard sword. So it's better than that, but not better than other ones. I want to do horizontal, but I already know if I hit up here, I don't think I'll get through it on a horizontal cut. I'll try, right? Nope. Okay. Dug into it a bit. Now I'll try that horizontal cut closer down to the sharper section around here, and so going right here for the horizontal. So cut through it, not clean. Look at that, look at that. And so again, that's the sharpness losing its momentum, ending it off. All right then, so that gives us plenty enough feedback to gauge the factory edge on this sword. Not the best. Okay, this is why cutting bottles actually gives you a lot more feedback than people suppose. I have a little short explaining that. The fact that we had a lot of trouble getting through bottles, and in some cuts couldn't get through them at all, that gives us enough feedback to know it's not going to get through the tatami with this sharpness of blade. If it does, it'll be a credit to it. Mostly blunt-ish. I wonder, like, I felt it was sharper when I got this sword. I wonder if it was the locket and the metal on the inside of the locket, that it did end up scraping the inside, taking off the edge. I think that might have actually blunted, because I remember when I first got it, I took it out and I was like, woo, it's sharp. But this already feels blunter. So to compensate, I'm gonna have to try and put more strength into the cut. Usually shouldn't have to put a lot of strength into the cut to get through water bottles, but to get this with the sharpness on, I'm gonna have to really put some muscle, I think. We'll see how we go. Okay, okay, well, all right, I am happy with that then. And look, that's actually really smooth. It had more trouble with water bottles than it's tatami mat. What's going on?
Did pull a little bit.
You reckon I pulled a little bit? Yeah, you're right, there's like, see these cords?
It pulled.
It pulled on the cords a bit, so...
But it might have been just the force you put into
It
that.
could have been the force. Put more force into a cut, it'll cut better. But also, like, look how straight that cut is. There is a cut with good edge alignment, fellas. I'll take that. I'm quite happy with that. Should I try and cut further up the blade this time? See what this one does. Alrighty. Look, I got a good, decent way through. I actually put less strength into it that time. Like last time I fully grunted. I was like, ah! This time I was just like, eh. Could that have been also strength, you know, the amount that you put into the cut? It affects it. Let me try and do another full strength cut, opposite side. Let me switch to the other edge. Okay. I felt the resistance then, and you can tell, you can feel, like, see the fraying on this, and it even got a bit sloppy towards the end. And the only reason I got through was the extra weight I put into it, the muscle I put behind it. Because if I just did the level of strength cut I did before, it wouldn't have gotten through. But, because this is the other thing, like, swords that are even blunter than this can get through tatami mats. This is where the misconception that swords need to be the sharp as the sharp to function effectively is actually incorrect. You can get good cuts, right, with a sword that is not as sharp. But it also, this is great information and feedback, because so far we're getting lots of information from the bottle cuts. The bottles were surprisingly unforgiving with having a poor edge on it. Where this seems less forgiving for the poor edge, just put more muscle into it and you'll get through.
But you're able to see every single time where it's starting to pull.
Look at that, because yeah, this is evidence of not great sharpness. It's pulled on that before it was able to get through it. So one final cut, I reckon. Ah, gosh, I want to do a horizontal cut, but it's not going to get through. It's not get. I'll put weight into it, and I'll try and get my full thing. I don't think it'll get through. We'll see. We'll see. It got through it, cut it fully, but there was obviously a lot of pull, a lot of pull that knocked it off. Interesting feedback. So, in terms of its performance due to its profile, I'm seeing good performance. Like the weight, the maneuverability, the way you can just leverage the cut.
Sorry to interrupt. Yeah? Forensics time.
Forensics.
So, we're able to see here, it is actually cutting.
Yeah.
But then when it's starting to get to these down here, it's starting to rip.
You're right.
See here, it's starting to rip.
Yep, yep.
So, it is cutting, but then we're starting to rip. Mm-hmm. Rip and tear.
Rip and tear. I reckon there's enough meat to try and get one more cut on this.
Try not to do horizontal. The peg is like...
Yeah, I'm going to go on an angle, and I'll try and avoid the thing close to the tip, which means it'll be, I think it's blunter close to the tip, but we'll just see what we can get, okay? Nah. And nope-itty nope. Really interesting feedback though. Really interesting feedback. I saw no flaws as a result of the design of the sword, the profile and everything like that. Every problem that arose from the cutting is clearly the sharpness of the edge. So I would sharpen it up, get great performance, I reckon, and it does confirm a lot of what I love about this sword profile. Yeah, let me know what you think in terms of the feedback that we got out of those cuts. Now for the stress test portion of this review. It's not to gauge the cutting, we've already done that. Even though when we've gone to the Shadlands to cut the tea tree, I certainly do comment on how well it cuts that, and so if it cuts this well, I'll comment on it, but mainly this is to see how well the sword holds up to the level of shock that's put into the blade when you hit something solid like solid wood. The reason why we're not going to the shadowlands this time is a couple of things. It's actually quite warm, so out in the hot sun, I'd rather avoid that nice shade here. As well, the sap on that tea tree stuff, it actually stains the blades of the swords, and so I would rather avoid that. I like this one, so we're still going to do a full proper stress testing. I would just like to preserve the look on the blade a bit. Alrighty, so let's give this a go. First thing to stress test, stupid branches. It mainly snapped. It just snapped it by force. Although, is that where I cut? Right there? There's some good cutting action. Okay, that did all right. So into wood. Yeah, I know, but like, that got nice and deep. It's holding together very solidly. It's knocked off the clamps, but so far so good. Let's actually try it against some, this is pine, we'll do some harder wood. So this is dried gum. Gum, gum tree wood, it actually dries pretty solid and hard and can be tough to get through. So let's give this a go. And actually bit into it nice and well. I think we'll just leave the clamps off at this point. All right, so bit into the wood decently, decent points. No discernible damage on the blade at all. Feels a little blunter in the parts of where I was hitting the wood pretty solidly. We got no loosening on this crossguard and pummel at all. Every single sword that we've stress tested with really hard strikes onto solid wood has loosened the pummel so far, or that I've reviewed. Every single one. I want to put it through a bit more abuse just because I think I did some more heavy strikes with some of those other swords. So let's try and be fair. And we're gonna go and hit a tree now. Now that's the type of thing that would loosen a sword pummel. Like, even again, I'm not going easy on it. I'm not letting it get away. I'm putting muscle into these. Coming close. What? I have only the slightest perceptible wobble on the pummel. Nothing on the crossguard. Tyrant, come and have a feel. Have a feel of the nothing. But there, you can feel it on the tiniest thing.
Yeah, just a little bit. Going that way.
Nothing.
Nothing on this?
A tiny
little bit there. Yeah.
All right. This sword has actually excelled in comparison to the other ones I've reviewed in its durability against abuse, with keeping that crossguard tight, and the pummel has only loosened the tiniest amount. And I was abusing that sucker. I was not going easy. So that is actually quite impressive. Last thing to test is thrusting. Ooh, actually that got dug in quite a bit. Huh. We got big deflection there. Okay. Comparing to other swords, I've seen greater deflection with the amount of force that I'm putting behind it. This is obviously deflecting, but it's deflecting less based on the force that I'm putting in, and it's staying ridgier longer basically based on the force. Like, there's deflection, but this, whoa, is actually really good. Oh, this would easily run through someone with the amount of force that you can put behind this and the amount of structure you still feel in the blade, and you can keep pushing. This is actually devastating. Oh, I friggin' love it. Ah! Ooh. 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 Returns to true. There we go. This is the Balaur Arms Alexandria sword, type 18C, or 15th century, type 18C. And overall thoughts now in summary. I am impressed. Genuinely, one of the things that impressed me most about it was its durability. It's held up best against the type of abuse that will subject the swords here in our reviews than any other sword so far. Factory edge is not the best. It's not a flawless sword. There are problems, like the locket on this scabbard, which I actually do think contributed to blunting that factory edge a bit. It's not flawless in terms of its fit and finish, but the quality that you get for the price range of this sword, wow, yeah, I would buy it with my own money. I highly recommend it. And in actual fact, this is a brilliant, affordable option for a very functional Alexandria sword, type 18C, which is, like I said, it's one of my favorite profile swords. And so I would be on the lookout for a sword of this style. And this is one of the more affordable and functional, well-made, beautiful. I look at the weight, the handling characteristics, the blade profile. They hit those elements out of the park. I give it pretty high marks. I'd probably give this a good 7 out of 10, I think. Just because of those other flaws. If you sharpened it up, actually no, it might be closer to 8 out of 10 because it's more durable than some of the other ones. I'd almost give it an 8 out of 10. And sharpening it up, you could even get higher. Really, really impressed with it. It is made out of higher quality steel than your standard 1060, and so actually 8 out of 10. I'll give it a good solid 8 out of 10. Shout out to Cold of Athena for providing the review sample, and it's available at Cold of Athena, link in the description. I do recommend it. But this isn't the only one. I'm loving doing sword reviews, and we got more coming, so I hope to see you there. Tell me what you think in the description below. What were your thoughts on how the sword performed? Hope to see you on the other sword reviews and all the other content we have here on Shadowversity. So until that time, farewell.